There's a new report from The Intercept that shows how the FBI was more concerned about BLM activists, that's Black Lives Matter, not the Bureau of Land Management, which apparently Republicans also had a problem with.
I'm glad you clarified that because I automatically assumed Bureau of Land Management.
Right?
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, apparently the FBI was more concerned about that than white supremacists. So now this report from Ken Klippenstein over at The Intercept identifies a contractor called Zero Fox, which I don't understand how these contractors get such weird names.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Blackwater, Z, same company, by the way, Zero Fox, all these weird, defense-y kind of.
They try to sound like supervillains, basically.
Yeah, the supervillain names. There you go.
Yeah.
Like weird corporation supervillain names that you would see from like a Bond movie.
Right.
Bond.
They know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, this contractor called Zero Fox was hired to monitor social media threats. And so, again, threats on social media. Now, all they would have to do to find threats from social media is Gab or, Reddit r the Donald when it exists. Now, I think it's like Reddit r the Win.
Right.
Like that. I don't know if it's the Win, but whatever. All they'd have to go and do is look at right-wing, social media sites, and you'd see all sorts of, Nazis and white supremacists, openly threatening pretty much everybody, especially the LGBTQ community, but pretty much everyone. But instead, they targeted two non-violent leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement. So Zero Fox had identified DeRay McKesson and Janetta Elsey as posing, quote, a high-severity physical threat, despite no evidence that McKesson or Elsey were suspected of any criminal activity. But Mike, obviously, we know why they were targeted.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the first time in history that civil rights activists have been targeted. And it's not going to be the last, unfortunately. And, the great irony, if we want to call it that, is the fact that when you look at raw numbers of the incidents of terrorist attacks, they are overwhelmingly coming from the far right.
Yeah.
So for them to choose to prioritize Black Lives Matter activists over the real danger, it goes to show you that our country is very much so deeply white supremacist. Our institutions are deeply white supremacist. And this level of anti-Blackness it's there at every single level of governments. And we keep learning about this, but yet there's still so many people that deny this reality, like the systemic issues that are leading to this situation. So this is the least surprising story ever. But the one thing that I really hope to get out of this is that people care about this, right? Because when we look at these types of stories, there's always this element of, well, how does this affect me, right? Like if I'm on Twitter and the FBI or the government is looking at me, then that's I don't like that. But like people need to extrapolate and realize that like civil liberties are civil liberties, and if they come for Black activists, they're gonna come for you. So you need to care even if you don't think you're being affected. And, this country has a history since the Patriot Act, especially of, spying on civilians, without warrants. So people need to take this seriously. But part of the problem, and I think that the reason why a lot of people don't really, put too much stock into these issues is because, unfortunately, we're kind of accustomed to it, right? We've been beat down and we just kind of accept, okay, the government's spying on me. Corporations are spying on me. They're collecting our data. So, it's hard for people to worry. But I mean, the fact that they are choosing actively to spy on Black Lives Matter and not white supremacists, it says a lot about our country as if we needed to know more, right?
Right. The irony about that, and again, everything that you said right there, I 100% agree with. The irony is that you have people that are right-wingers that were on Twitter, and they're like, oh, government's spying on us. And then you have these congressional Republicans that are like, the government's spying on us. I can't believe that they would target conservatives. The IRS is targeting conservatives. Everybody's targeting conservatives. Look at the Twitter files. We've got Twitter files. They're everywhere. The files are, and of course we all read the Twitter files and we're like, yeah, there's really nothing there. In fact, we find out from the Twitter files that actually the Trump campaign, the Trump presidency, sorry, not the Trump campaign, went in to, try to have Twitter remove things that were critical of Donald Trump. And whereas the Biden campaign, they reached out to Twitter and said, hey, please, can you remove my son's dick pics from the internet? And so understand, like, there's a huge difference there. Tweets critical of Donald Trump, okay, that's falls under free speech. But when it comes to Hunter Biden schlong, the Republicans are like, no, that's free speech. We want to see the schlong. We want to see the dong. We just want to see the dong. And we want to share it with all of our friends. That seems a little weird, doesn't it? And definitely not free speech because it violates revenge porn laws.
Right. I mean, it's a violation of privacy and like
100%.
The ultimate extent. Like if these types of explicit photographs were going around of me, I would absolutely take action.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have to consent to that. So yeah, it's just, there's always this double standard, and it's not just with regard to privacy, right? Like, remember Philando Castile? This was an American who was practicing his right to own firearms, Second Amendment.
Yep.
Where the fuck was the NRA? You know what I mean? To defend him. It's just when it comes to Black people, and their rights being violated, it's just crickets, because, at the end of the day, the right only cares about themselves and how it affects them. And it's not just a right-wing issue, to be fair, but like that's where the hypocrisy is the most blatant.
Absolutely. And again, when you're talking about government surveillance, we're all affected by this. It's not just the government targeting the right. In fact, as we've proven over and over again, because you and I have both done, I'm assuming multiple segments, I know I have, on how the government tends to focus on the left when it comes to spying on the left. And this is another example. And we find out, of course, simply because the government was looking into why, and this is the whole irony of the entire situation, how did the government miss all the signs pointing to January 6th, that something was going to happen on January 6th.
Right.
And so we get this 106-page Senate report of that, of this absolute failure. And it shows very plainly that they weren't worried about the right. They weren't worried about white supremacists. All their focus was on Black people and trying to, Black people, scary Black man and scary Black woman. You're the obvious threat. Black Lives Matter. You're the threat. When in reality, we know that the threat has, at least in recent years, has come pretty much exclusively from the right wing.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no competition. They're doing all the terrorism, but yet they don't get the same scrutiny, even a fraction of the same scrutiny as any other marginalized community gets. It's deeply frustrating, but the least surprising story I've ever heard, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And one more thing that I want to mention is how the FBI so cavalierly lied about it. For example, this, and I actually do have to give credit to Kirsten Sinema. Oh, God. I know. But in testimony before the Senate in 2021, FBI's then Assistant Director for Counterterrorism, Jill Sanborn, had flatly denied that they were spying, that the FBI even had power to monitor social media discourse. So Sinema asked, does the FBI not monitor publicly available social media conversations? And she responded, correct, ma'am. It's not within our authorities. And then cited First Amendment. But we know, again, and I give credit to Sinema for actually asking that question. It's like, hey, are you sure you're not spying in on people? Because you're not supposed to. And they're like, oh, no, we're not spying. No, First Amendment. But it turns out Sanborn absolutely lied. In fact, the Senate report noted that FBI leadership mischaracterized the Bureau's authorities to monitor social media. calling it an exaggeration of the limits on FBI's authorities, which are in fact quite broad. So again, that's damning because they lied first. They lied about it, and they lied about spying in on Black Lives Matter protests, and they did so while ignoring the obvious threats from the far right, from white supremacists and white nationalist groups. And not only that, by the way, they also spied on abortion rights protests and things that didn't even relate to law enforcement at all. In fact, another report, once again by The Intercept, revealed that U.S. Marshal Service contract with a company called Data Miner, which Fox Zero had taken over for on their contract, had also, basically relayed criticism to the FBI of the Met Gala and jokes about Trump's weight. Those were the real issues that Data Miner would relay to the FBI, but not talk about white supremacy or white nationalism.
It's, gossip snitching. I'm assuming that's not the original intent behind the creation of the FBI.
But maybe it is. When you look at J. Edgar Hoover,
possibly, yeah. Honestly, I stand corrected. That's a really good point.
The FBI has never been a friend to the left. It has never been a friend to progressives. It has always been an enemy of progressives. And again, going back to how there's so much irony in this story.
There really is.
You'd think it's Flint water, where again you have conservatives that complain about the FBI targeting them when again they've always targeted the left and leftist movements and were created, and I think these agencies were created explicitly to target the left. But nowadays, since the white supremacist threat is so open, so out in the open and so dangerous to so many government workers, now they're forced to look into it and they don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't think
because I think that they know that in a lot of these instances, the call is coming from within the House, right? So I think that if they really search for something that they're afraid to find, that could explain a little bit of it, because how many people are domestic terrorist threats within the government, within the police,
especially.
Right. So we know why they do this, right? It's bias. It is explicit racism, but it is as American as apple pie, unfortunately. And in order to truly have change in this country, you have to root out that white supremacy that is embedded within all of these institutions. Like the FBI is one of the more egregious examples, but like it's deeper than that, right? At every single level of government, there is so much anti-blackness baked in. And we're not in a situation where we can have real change and make a material difference in the lives of people with all of this there, So I hope that people understand that and they realize what they're working with, because once you identify the true root causes, then that's when you know what to fight for.